Today I've got Phil Hazing here. Mr. Hazing is the band director at Nampa High School, which is just outside of Boise, Idaho, in Nampa, Idaho, right?
That's correct.
Excellent.
Just a
Uh,
suburb.
Suburb, yeah, excellent. So Phil and I went to undergrad together, and this is kind of part of the series of trying to kind of show all of you where I'm coming from and what my undergrad experience was like, but also some of the people that I met and have stayed in touch with and what their careers in music have been like. So, like I already mentioned, Phil is a band director. He got a degree in music education. But what you're going to find out from what we're talking about here is that Phil has used that information for many different parts of music and the music industry and education. Um, and also, you're going to find out that he's a real human being who has a real life and doesn't just teach all the time. So, Phil, if you could just kind of give us like a brief outlay of kind of what your professional and personal bio is.
Yeah, I grew up basically in Iowa. I was born in South Dakota, but I did all my schooling in Iowa. I was from an agrarian kind of town. My parents weren't farmers, but my dad worked with farmers, and it was a town of about 5,000 people. And I grew up starting band in fifth grade. I started piano lessons before that, but I was very fortunate to have a very good elementary, then middle school, and then high school band directors. And my middle school director was also my high school jazz band director as well, all the way through the jazz program. It was a small school, but it was consolidated, so the work ethic was very strong. A lot of farmers' daughters and sons, and just grew up working on a farm, and so it was a really competitive place for being the size that it was, and a lot of success in athletics and music, just the rigor in the classroom. And I didn't realize that until I actually taught somewhere else, and it was not like that. Um, and I went to Luther College in Decorah, Iowa, and Decorah is a similarly small town. I would say more progressive, and the campus is there in a beautiful place. I loved my time at Luther. My major instrument was trombone, and I spent a lot of time playing bass trombone because when I first got to Luther, there wasn't a good bass trombonist. There were just a couple. There was basically one guy who played tenor and kind of filled the role. And so I was going through an embouchure change on tenor trombone, and I just started playing bass because that was going to be a little bit easier, and it helped my tenor trombone playing a ton. And I ended up playing bass trombone in the jazz band, the orchestra, and the touring concert band for 3 years. The orchestra I was just in for 1 year. Um, I got my first teaching job. I student taught in a great band program. In college, we did not have marching band, and so I was really um, a bit nervous about teaching marching band. But I student taught in the fall with a competitive marching band, and so I had grown up coming through a program that wasn't competitive, but we did a nice job for the home team, and we went to a festivals-based festival once a year, and we did a nice job. That was a whole different show than competitive marching band, and I learned how to do that full blast, which is why I was prepared to go out and do my job, teaching marching band right away, and starting to try to build a culture. At my first teaching job, so I student taught fall semester, and my first job started right away in January of 2006. And I was looking at a situation where they had like 70 some kids in band. They were looking at having like 22 if they didn't change the teacher in the middle of the year. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the mutual respect in the classroom had eroded, and the teacher was not being very supportive by the administrators, for starters. um, and it was a really rocky situation. But I came in and the kids were great, and mostly what those students needed, and this is probably one of the more important things that I'm going to say to you, is that when you get a job, you need to stick around. If it's a high school position, that's a 4-year high school. Stick around for 4 years at least. If it's a middle school position, stick around for 6, 7, 8, whatever it is. Stick around for the life of the program. You're asking your students to commit to that program and beyond if you're a feeder school. So you should commit to that program as well. And it's really hard to tell if you're making progress if you're jumping around from job to job seeking a better job. And I did that. the freshmen that were there. I graduated 4 classes of kids, and you'll be shocked at how much a community appreciates you just for sticking around. Um, After 4 years, all my family had moved from Iowa, and I was spending all my free time and my money going to see them. So I moved to Idaho, which is a beautiful place to visit. It's a wonderful place to live. And I was very lucky to get a job that was a whole bunch more responsibility. When I got this position, there were 4 jazz bands, they're curricular jazz bands, a competitive marching band, wind ensemble, concert band, and a music theory class for one director.
What year is this at Nampa?
This will be your 12 in Nampa, so you're basically your full year 15 overall, 16 if you count that first semester.
All right, so this is year 12, and you've got a family. So what's it like having a family and this big job that you do?
Yeah, so I didn't get married until I was 27. I was really career focused when I got out of college. Most people, I lived in a small town. I'm ashamed to say I didn't go on a date for 4 years. Um, but I was really focused on my career. That doesn't mean I worked all the time, and that's something that I had to learn. But I had a lot of free time, and I just had an apartment, so I would go down to school and practice those instruments in those days. Once I got married, I gave up. I was playing in Boise twice a week at the time, and so I gave up one of those nights because it was just commuting a lot. It was kind of a pain anyway. Um, but yeah, you make sacrifices, and when you when you get married, my wife was the drum major of a 300 member band, and so that was one of the things, frankly, that was really attractive about her to me, because she understood what a giant band program is all about and the time commitment. Definitely make sure before you're getting hitched for life, that your person understands the time commitment of the job, and that you understand that you could work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the work is never ever done. So you have to establish boundaries.
I just want to back up a little bit to college. So, when you were in college, what were some of the opportunities that you remember specifically taking advantage of? And then, how did some of those opportunities kind of shape your college experience? And I mean, kind of along with that, were there any opportunities that you wish you'd taken advantage of that you didn't?
I'll take the first part of the question first.
Okay.
I looked at what I was going to do for my career and what I really enjoyed. And I knew for me in high school, jazz band was a really big deal. And I played tuba actually my senior in concert band, symphonic band. But I knew that I couldn't just be a really good jazz musician. And I met a ton of people. There were a lot of choral people, voice people at Luther, and there was a lot of crossover too. So one of my best friends, our lead trombonist in our jazz band, is a professional opera singer now. And I remember having conversations with Rudy about being a well-rounded musician and loving music history and theory and oral skills or ear training and all of the classes, and really embodying what it means to be a musician instead of just a band student or a jazz band student or a trombone player or a don't I would encourage you not to pigeonhole yourself, but take all those classes. What I was really concerned with was I was really interested in history, and I thought, man, I'm going to forget all this because I might not use it or whatever. And I remember talking to the music history professor and saying that, and he said, yes, if you're really interested in it, then you can go to grad school and get more in depth. But specifically, I always wanted to play in jazz band and concert band because I knew I was going to be a band director, and I thought that was not negotiable. I auditioned into the touring orchestra as well as a sophomore, and so I was in 3 major ensembles. That was really I transferred. I left out a major piece that I won't really address, but I transferred at semester to Luther, and I was an aviation major first semester at a different college. So my first full semester in the theory and ear training and everything was first semester my sophomore year. Meanwhile, they had a Messiah production every year where they did most of the Messiah. I wanted to do the Messiah chorus, and these three main ensembles and a chamber ensemble and all these ensembles. And I was like, man, this is great. And then I got into it and it wasn't very great. So for me personally, and there were people at Luther who could totally do that and be slamming in classes and just had an inexhaustible amount of energy, and there weren't very many of those people. So it that's when I kind of learned how to say no. That's part of, look at everything you have, look at what you want to do, what you can commit to long term in terms of major ensembles, and so I love doing jazz band, and I love doing concert band, and I love doing orchestra. But I was sitting, and I would have stayed in orchestra absolutely, but I was doing the most counting rest in orchestra, and I knew that I was going into band. So I'm pretty sure Dr. Yates did all three of those all the time, and many other people did. I just couldn't. And
Important
so,
boundaries.
say that.
To know your boundaries. Your
Yeah.
boundaries.
Yeah, and then on campus opportunities, and one thing that I often say now is make sure you're having a balanced amount of fun. Don't always be the guy in the practice room every Friday and Saturday night, trying to prove that you're the best trombonist in the world. Make sure you take time to socialize with your music colleagues and meet people outside of the department, and do the things on campus that are offered. I'll never forget an opportunity that I took up. The night before my senior project was due, I went to a Robert Randolph and the Family Band concert for the first half, and then I went and finished my project. And I definitely was running across the lawn to turn it in the next day when it was due at 3 p.m. So don't wait that long. And that was the only thing that I procrastinated on in college, but it was the biggest thing. So
Well, I mean, so you're talking about taking advantage of opportunities, but were there any times when you had an opportunity that you didn't take advantage of it that you kind of regret? Or, I mean, can you even talk about times when, maybe you weren't taking something as seriously as you could have and you could have gotten more from it?
yes, yeah. Dr. Yates and I talked a little bit the other day. Specifically, I will tell you about this. I had our band director was phenomenal band director and conducting teacher. Um, we didn't have private conducting lessons, which again I didn't realize were a thing for undergraduate students until I got out of there and I started taking conducting lessons last spring. I thought that was mostly for graduate students, but everybody started with the first movement of Holst's First Suite in that conducting class, and that's one of the reasons I haven't performed it with one of our performing groups to this day, because I got to play it a lot. Um, but I went into my first, in those days, they recorded with video camera, and then we had a VHS. I mean, DVDs were around, but we didn't have that technology apparently. But I went in for my first video conference, and I didn't have a VHS, VCR player in my room. I didn't have a TV. Um, and so I hadn't watched it. I hadn't reviewed it. I didn't take the time to go over to the library and do the work, the very short amount of work, to make some notes. So I had a discussion point with my professor, and he called me on the carpet kindly and also sternly at the same time. He said, what do you think you're going to get out of this if you haven't done the time, yourself? And he was absolutely right. It's the same. Um, it's the same for any course of study. You're going to get out of it everything that you put into it and a lot more, or not. And so please invest in your classes. Take them all seriously. I was a really driven student, and so that was not normal for me. I think he was pretty disappointed. But back to the becoming a well-rounded musician, I wanted to be able to speak to people about a historical context of a tune, or I knew I'd probably have to teach some theory, and wouldn't you know, I teach a theory class, so it's really important. There are other things, and I think this could be a different question about where I think they could spend more time in the course of study in college.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I, yeah, we could obviously chat about that. Um, I'm gonna actually see if I can nudge you towards some other stuff that we chatted about the other day. Um, one of the things that we think about a lot when we're talking to students in music is I'm a faculty member, but I'm not this like all-knowing, super important person. I just teach at the university that my students attend, and it's my goal to do the best that I can to get them the information that they need. But can you kind of dive in a little bit on how to communicate with professors, or how to, I don't know, kind of get to know them, and work with them on that collegial level, but also kind of on that more personal level?
Right. Well, first of all, in class, when you get your syllabus, which I'm sure is a requirement for every professor to have one, if you're in a unit and you've got questions about what's coming up, communicate early, stay on top of your coursework because it's really easy to get behind and then it's really easy to feel helpless. So do the very best you can on everything and get your work turned in so that they know you're an accountable person. They know that you're at least doing your best to turn it in. And even though it's not perfect, um, realize that once in a while when you're incredibly overburdened or you've had a personal thing happen in your life, like maybe you had to go to a funeral, or um, your childhood pet could have died. It whatever is personal to you, a very serious thing, you've got to have the wherewithal to know that those professors are humans and they are humane, and you go speak with a professor about what's going on and you can talk through some things and they might say, just turn in what you have and we can go after it after that. They might say, yeah, take another day, this is really important. You'd be surprised at what extension you might be granted in your most stressful moment. And if you're like me, you don't want to appear like you don't have it all together all the time. And so you would want to avoid that conversation, which I tried to do. And it put me in a position a couple times in college where then I had to rebuild myself a little bit. And it would have just been easier, I found out after I went to the health service and talked to a counselor a little bit, that to just talk to those professors and they're like, wow, that's going on with you. So that's kind of a more personal thing, just about workflow. Okay, the best, a good ways to get to know them, greet your professors in the hallway every day, talk to them. Building relationships is the part that I'm gonna, that's the most important part of probably any job, is being able to work with people. And so greet them and have a short conversation with them. Mr. Nylene, how was your weekend at the lake? Mr. Nylene, I'm really looking forward to whatever. You're not sucking up to them just by talking to them. Those studios that your studio professors work in are very small rooms. And so when they have contact outside of that, they're probably going to really warm up to that really quickly. And they're at Luther, and I'm sure at where you are in Louisiana, Lafayette, right?
Yep. Yep.
You've got people who are in your shoes, some of them long ago, if they've been there a long time, but some of them not very long ago. And that's what I say to my high school students sometimes. It's like trying to relate to them. The older I get, I don't think it gets tougher. It just takes a little bit of work. And, ask them what they're researching. What are you working on? Or if they're going on sabbatical, what are you going to do on your sabbatical? Whatever. If they've just come back, what'd you do? Ask them what they're interested in, or look at their bulletin board and see what's going on. So it's it's a pretty easy process to just establish that connection, and it's much easier as a teacher if your students are seeking that connection from you.
Yeah, I think that's an important point that you just made. Is sometimes as a faculty member, it's easier if somebody just comes up to me and says hi, rather than I always having to do that engaging. And I
Right.
think it's important just to point out that what you said is really true too. It's not sucking up. It's not inappropriate, behavior to communicate with faculty and on a personal level and ask them how they're doing. So I think those are really great points. Um, to just kind of follow up with these kind of relationships with faculty. I mean, part of the job, and the interaction is sometimes to get critical feedback, about the things that you're doing, whether it be in a lesson or an ensemble or even a class. It's our job as teachers to help our students get better at what they're working on. So Can you kind of talk about some ways of interacting with faculty at that level?
Yeah. You came to college, yes, to get a degree, but to learn from experts in their field. And so, first of all, if you're getting feedback over and over again from a professor and it's like not your style or way too stern or something like that, you might say, whoa, like I don't really respond really well when you say it like that. Or could you explain it a different way? Like if there's that going on, that's different. If they're giving you feedback and you say, you didn't really make that phrase, don't take things personally. They're not saying you're a horrible human being, and you all know this. But music is one of those things where you're striving for this great performance, this perfect performance, knowing that you're never going to be perfect. And the process to eliminate those errors, of course, is practice and proper practice. And so I spent a lot of time with my trombone professor asking him how to practice. I was the lead trombonist in my high school jazz band. I was always first chair and stuff, but I knew how to play really well. So the process of practice, or come in to each practice session when you're going to the practice room with a small goal in mind. Be result oriented for yourself. Have an end game for midpoint, or if you want to push yourself on a jury piece, challenge yourself, but not too hard. But I just mean push yourself and discipline yourself so that in your private lesson thing, anything, you're not getting disciplined by somebody else for not doing your work. And then if they're giving you feedback, take that feedback, whether you bring your practice notebook to your lesson, or if your prof has a way to organize that with you. If they don't, I recommend bringing a notebook and taking notes, just on things that you're doing. You'll have a lot of eureka or aha moments, maybe.
So, do you have any kind of words of wisdom about specifically staying on top of things in this virtual educational world that we're experimenting with?
Yeah. So in college, I lived. Luther put out a pencil and paper planner, spiral bound, and it had all the college work in a planner. Even if this is your planner, I recommend pencil and paper because you can literally fold over a page and cross things out. Not only could I see what I had done, but I could see that I'd crossed it off the list to stay organized. And what I'm noticing with the high school students, or at least the administrators are speaking about, is how overwhelmed kids are with virtual teaching and learning. And you absolutely must stay organized with a planner, with a date book, and be punctual and early to logging into those things. Some profs when I was in college would lock the door. Um, if you're late to class or whatever, don't be that person where, the prof is going to start on time. So you should start on time if it's synchronous instruction. Um, yeah, I actually picked the grad program that I picked because it wasn't online. And then sure enough, the first year, it's a 3 summer program with some pretty heavy projects, but sure enough, the first summer was online and they were so well organized. I would encourage you to extend, if this is the way I was in college. I looked at my professors and I at times expected them to be perfect. Um, and I can tell you as a teacher right now, with classes starting on Monday, it's not going to be perfect. Um, Extend grace, and that grace will be extended back to you. And that's not just true in virtual teaching. That's a good rule of thumb, period. Um, but I'm sure your profs have been working all summer to figure this out. And there's going to be a variety of things. You might be on campus for some things, you might be virtual for others. You've got to be able to roll with the punches and realize what's in your control and what's not, what's in their control and what's not. And just be very graceful and still maintain a positive attitude. Do the best that you can. Don't take things personally. And just every day remind yourself that what you have is an opportunity. And I would encourage you, this is not conclusive. We're probably going to have some more questions, but to remind yourself every day, instead of looking at this situation, virtual situation or coronavirus situation, as a series of things being taken away or opportunities being taken away, look at it as a tremendous opportunity of time that you're going to have to balance, but an opportunity of time to get better as a musician and to get everything you can out of the opportunities you do have. Because the fact of the matter is, to go to college, yes, it's a lot of money, it's a huge investment, but it's also a huge opportunity. And it's an opportunity that, of course, not everybody has. And in terms of building relationships, surround yourself with people who are very successful. Build your professional network. I mentioned that I went to that conference and I just established when I was a first year teacher, or even when I was in college, and you can go to conferences when you're in college, you don't have a lot of money floating around, but there's usually grants to go to conferences like your state music educators conference and stuff like that to help college students. Um, Go to a professional conference, be a member no matter what of your state music association or bandmasters association, of the teachers association, the union. Those are all advocating organizations, and they have paid big dividends for a small amount of dues or a membership fee. And like if it's like it is in Iowa or Idaho, you're required to be in that organization. So the school pays for my membership in order to go to festivals. School pays for my dues for the state music association. So yeah, just get involved with your professional network and try to attend a conference every year. You'll have to do continuing education in a lot of different jobs, not just as an educator. And so you can knock that out a little bit too. But the networking opportunity, like I host the Idaho All State Band rehearsal in the band room here at Nampa High every third year. And a lot of what I do for that week is sit and talk with my colleagues up in my office and just ask them how they're doing, and we share ideas. And this the profession of music is mostly about collaboration. Even if you're a concert pianist, and you practice, spend a lot of time practicing alone. So, yeah, just surround yourself with really successful people, people who are better than you at what you do, and learn from them and ask them questions. Have a mentor.
I like that. Nice.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you. I think Benjamin's going to stop recording. I wish you all good luck. How many students are we talking to today, Benjamin?
158.
Holy cow, what a huge room. And yet the room in front of me is empty. Um, it's way less intimidating that way.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Well, I'm really glad we were able to do this. I really think you've got some great ideas, and I think everyone will be able to walk away with one thing that they can really think about for their future moving forward. And I really appreciate the positive way in which you think about this and speak about this. So thanks so much for doing this.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.
We'll see you soon, Phil.
All right, sounds good.